Welcome to the Fibers of Life and Business with Joe Watkins. Today we're going to get right up under the hood, just like I took off my hat and you got up under this hood. We're going to get right up under the hood of what in the heck is the fibers of life. I've been getting this question all over online, in person, everywhere I go, and I've been pushing it off a little bit, been putting little bits and pieces out, but today we're going to give just a quick overview of what really is the fibers of life and where it came from. And we're talking about building a life that compounds. That's sort of the title, building a life that compounds. That's kind of the heart of the fibers of life. And so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to read this definition that I wrote here. The fibers of life is a holistic investment model for human flourishing. Just like a financial portfolio, life is built on intentional investment, expected return, healthy margin, and awareness of deficits. Each fiber requires ongoing deposits. When one fiber runs a deficit, it quietly erodes the performance of the others. When all are strengthened together, they compound. So this is a premise of the fibers of life. It's this idea that making healthy investments in your life fibers and making strategic investments and how you create the greatest return in those investments is all what it's about. And why did this come about? I'm a finance guy. I've lived my life sort of maybe overly focusing on the financial fiber. And that investment idea, that investment mindset that I had has served me very well in that financial fiber. And so it occurred to me as I was podcasting a few years ago with a good friend, at his encouragement, he said, you need to take this idea that you've been successfully using in your business and in your finances, and let's apply that across our life, because we've been doing that in other facets of conversation, and we had started in that podcast talking a lot about how really business and life and family, it all just collides, right? They're not in isolation of each other. And so as you make a decision over here in business, or as you make a decision of your time or your talent or your resources, it drains somewhere else. You can't be everywhere and be everything to all people. So we are, whether we like it or not, making investments in our life fibers. Now, what are those life fibers? Just to recap, I did mention those in the last show. It's an acronym, FIBERS. It's financial, intellectual, biological, emotional, relational, and spiritual. Those are the 6 life fibers. And I'm going to put a little diagram up here as I go and talk about these. I want you to look at this diagram because it really helps to understand. This is a simple diagram, but it's showing how all of these are interconnected, and the balance of these may look very different in different parts of your life. All right. But real quickly, the financial fiber is how you earn, manage, and steward resources to create stability and margin. And I called that financial fiber, if I could pick one thing that made that financial fiber make sense to me on where it should be, it's financial stewardship. Financial stewardship is what I believe is what we're looking for in that fiber. So the intellectual fiber, how you learn, think, and grow in wisdom, skill, and perspective. And so the intellectual fiber, I used intellectual expansion as that one word. That one word that just means I'm always willing to grow. I never think I have it all figured out. I'm always willing to grow. Okay. As we go back to the board here, or the wheel, the biological fiber, how you care for your physical health, energy, sleep, and longevity. And I chose biological health. Health is really at the core of the fibers. I mean, think about it. Without your health, you have nothing. And so that was to me, an easy one to pick on that one. As we go back here on the emotional fiber, how you process emotions, regulate stress, and build internal resilience. So I picked emotional peace. If we could be emotionally at peace, think about that. At peace with everything going on in our lives emotionally. Well, that's my weakest one. So that's what I'm looking for as I think about the fibers. The relational fiber, how you invest in trust, connection, and meaningful relationships. I once had, for that one word, I had relationship depth or something similar. And I changed it to relational agility. Why did I do that? I don't know. As I think about some relationships in your life are not going to be deep. And you need to know when they need to be deep and when they don't need to be deep. You need to know when the investment in that relationship is actually worth the return, because you are spending your time, talent, and resources with that relationship. So the ability to be agile, the ability to recognize what is an appropriate investment into that relationship, that's why I picked agility. So going back to the wheel here, the last one is the spiritual fiber, how you ground your life in purpose, truth, faith, and transcendence. So I picked spiritual centeredness as sort of being the one term that I could pick. If I could pick one place I'd want to be spiritually, it would be centered around God, who God is, and be more reflective of God in my life. And so those are the 6 life fibers. I'll let you look at them one more time. And you can see the acronym: financial fiber, intellectual fiber, biological fiber, emotional fiber, relational fiber, spiritual fiber. So the fibers of life is those 6 life fibers, and really the study of the investment in those fibers, which create a healthy margin in fibers. And sometimes you have deficits in your fibers. And ultimately, we're looking for the greatest return on investment of all of our time and talent and resources in these fibers. And so just real quickly, when I think about, people say, what is margin? Margin, I just define it very simply as margin is having more than enough. When you have enough finances to pay your bills week in and week out, then more than enough, you have a little bit of a buffer that you're setting aside every month, and maybe you're building the Dave Ramsey 6 month of expenses in another account. Well, that's creating real margin. And what does that do? What does that margin create in your finances? It creates a buffer or a preparedness or a defense against a potential attack of that financial fiber. So if an immediate loss of a job with no notice, right? If I have 6 months buffer of finances, then I've created a defense against tanking my life and tanking my finances, and thus drawing down other areas or other fibers of my life. We all have been in those situations where an attack on our finances can really hurt our relationships. It can hurt our emotional stability. We may be angry at God. It could hurt our spirituality. So there's a lot of things about how these fibers are interconnected. And so the whole goal for me, as I've thought about this for myself, and I want to share this with others, is be a little more strategic about the time, money, talent, resources that we are spending in these fibers in order to create a healthy balance. And that balance across your life will be different depending on the season that you are in. And so, maybe early in life, it's much more important to get that career started and figure out how to create some financial margin. By creating financial margin, it allows more time potentially and more decisions and opportunities to come your way or take advantage of, which ultimately free up time. And when you free up time, you can actually invest that time in other things like your intellectual side. Maybe you can read a book every day. And by reading a book, you can create maybe some emotional peace, or maybe it helps you in a relationship because you're reading a relationship book. There's just so many ways these fibers are tied, and that's really what the fibers of life is about. And the fibers of business has a similar connection. We'll discuss that in a later episode. But the fibers of life really is, it's just something I had to do. I had to talk about it. And I will get to interviews. I want to get other people's perspectives on how this can be effective in their life. And look, punch holes in it. I'm good with that. So the core idea, going back to the model here, the core idea is investment strengthens fibers. Return on investment shows up as capacity, peace, clarity, performance. Margin creates resilience and options, and deficits create a drag and potentially a drag on the rest of the fibers. So let's don't, just be head in the sand about these areas of our life. And I know we're not. I know oftentimes in every season of life, we get super focused in on one, maybe two areas. Maybe we got really focused on health this year or last year, and we went hardcore, so hardcore that is it potential that time or energy pulled from other? Maybe not, maybe so. That's the study, right? Is to think about, it's possible that what you needed to do was spend time there because that was your greatest deficit. And listen, if you're really overweight, if you are really unhealthy and really not feeling well, can it not also hurt you in your finances, hurt you in your emotional state, hurt you in your spiritual journey? So deficits are about individual. It's only for you to assess, not for anyone else. But individually, when you think about what drains you, what sucks the life out of you, what prevents you from moving forward, that drain probably is dragging several of your fibers. And as an advisor of anyone, I would say the deepest deficit would be the first area that I would pay attention to, because you can get potentially the greatest return on your time and energy if you focus on your greatest deficit. So that's the fibers of life. And I want to give that kind of the under the hood version of it, the under the hat version of the fibers of life, just so you'd have a little bit more foundation as we go forward in these episodes and learning more about the fibers of life and business. So thank you for listening. Your host, Joe Watkins. If you like the content, please give me a comment, subscribe. Obviously, it does a world of good for the channel to do that, and we appreciate you.